day two of the second edition of the world's largest fintech fest, the Global Fintech Fest, organized by Payments Council of India and Fintech Convergence Council, the two councils of Internet and Mobile Association of India, along with National Payments Corporation of India. This fest is presented by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, Reserve Bank of India, and supported by Niti Aayog, Startup India, Invest India, Central Bank of Kenya. I would also like to take this opportunity to quickly thank our institutional partner, CDF and Reserve Bank Innovative Hubs. The second edition of the Global Fintech Fest revolves around the theme Fintech Empowering a Global Digital Economy and provides an in-depth understanding of the latest businesses, policies, investments and technology developments within the fintech landscape globally. It is with great pleasure that I would like to introduce to you our next session for the day. This session is a panel discussion on the topic Reshaping the Digital Economy by Innovation, and this session is particularly supported and partnered by Amazon Pay. With that, I would like to quickly introduce to you our esteemed panelists, our moderator, Ms. Bhavna, Payments and Privacy, Amazon. We welcome you, Bhavna. Along with our other esteemed panelists, Mr. Mukesh Kalra, Founder and CEO, ET Money, Ms. Radhika Binani, Chief Product Officer, Paisabazaar, Mr. Pratik Gandhi, Chief Operating Officer, NIUM, and Mr. Dhyanesh Bhatt, CEO, Gramcover. We welcome all of you and thank you for taking out time to join this session today. A side note for our attendees, you may please put in your questions on the chat box on the right-hand side, and our panelists will try to respond to them at the end of the session. Over to you, Bhavna.
Thank you very much, Garima, and good morning to all. It is a pleasure to be part of this session. We have four wonderful panelists today to discuss the role of innovation in reshaping the digital economy. Traditionally, innovation has referred primarily to the product and service innovation. However, in the present digital economy, the boundaries of innovation have significantly broadened. In today's world, when we talk about innovation, we are not only just thinking about new machines and new products, but it is about the new ways of doing the things. This is about major shift in the design and processes of existing businesses, change in behavior of the customer, and I would say the society as a whole. Today, innovation is not only manifest in the customer purchase and use, but also how the business creates and deliver the value in a unique way. And behind this innovation, actually, digitization is actually the driving force. To put it very simple, digitization is actually a process of turning analog data into a digital data. However, when it is combined with the power of internet and telecom, it can reinvent the entire working structure of multiple industries. And that's what we have seen, ranging from television to music to books, gaming, news, and this present moment, even in telemedicine and schooling. And financial sector is also undergoing a substantial transformation as a result of the innovation. Innovation is shaping almost every aspect of financial services, including payments, lending, insurance, and wealth management. To add to that, COVID-19 pandemic has further escalated the digital transformation. In particular, the need of digital connectivity to replace human interaction with the remote need for operating in a digital service by making payments or other financial need of Indian customers. The financial service industry future will be radically different than what it is today, driven by many evolutionary changes. And to talk about this shift, we have got our panelists who are leading their businesses, companies, and recasting the various aspects of fintech. To start with, Mukesh, you are leading a startup in a wealth tech space. This is an area which has a low penetration. Indian customer have a low access as well as I would say the understanding of the wealth tech space. So my question to you is that, in your opinion, how the wealth tech space will evolve and what are the key innovations that are fundamentally changing the wealth industry?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bhavna, and thanks everyone. It's great to be on this panel, and we have a good set as well. Like there's people from insurance, people from payment, and and banking as well. So from a wealth tech perspective, Bhavna, I think there are a lot of underlying it's growing. Like everybody knows that it's growing at a very very rapid pace. To just throw a number out there, in the last 1 year itself, we have seen 11 million accounts, whether it is a demat or a mutual fund investment account being opened. And in the last 15 years of the industry, the overall number of users have been in the range of 20 million, right? So we're talking about 1 year actually equal to like the last 20 years or 15 years of the industry, right? So the kind of growth is massive. And such kind of growth really doesn't come without innovation, right? So there are underlying things that are actually happening. One is definitely, there is still $1 trillion still lying in savings account or deposits, right? And the second shift that is happening is consumers have become far more aware, right, as to keeping money in savings account is like a sure short way of losing it, because of the inflation, and people are actually getting more aware. The third thing is that there's this sudden explosion of the market, because as you rightly said, the access has increased, right? Like earlier there were 10, 20, 30 million users. Now there are 700 million online users, and they have this device in their hands, which actually explodes the market, right, in terms of the opportunity. And the other tailwind in the stock markets is also getting people to enter into it, right? And the sheer realization, like there is so much money that is finding its way into capital markets, uh, and all that money is driven by innovations across at a fundamental level, right? One is this consumer shift that is happening. The other is the whole, if you really look at it, the whole onboarding experience, right? At 80 Mini, for example, we were the first guys to actually do video KYC when it wasn't there actually even thought about, because we started with a mobile first approach, and suddenly that actually changed the game for us in terms of how we onboard a consumer. The percentage of users still continues to be 60-70% new to industry users, right? Then there have been a huge amount of innovation on the payment space as well, right? So how do we accept, like UPI has been a game changer for the industry in terms of accepting instantly or with high success rates, even for high value transactions. So earlier there was this whole thing that you cannot really use UPI for high value transactions. That has actually gone away. So we are seeing a huge amount of uptake because of UPI. And then there is this whole easier setup that can be done on SIPs, right? So I think there is this fundamental infrastructure which has got so much more innovative, so much more frictionless, right? That it is enabling that shift of users and money into capital markets in a big way, right? And I think the way forward is going to be like everybody has simplified the first wave of bringing the consumers in, which is really transactions, right? If I look at the innovation that is going to happen moving forward, it's going to be really, really kind of personalizing, right? Because the problem of a user deciding where to invest, how much to invest, markets are up, what do I do? Markets are down, what do I do? I have money, what do I do with So I think those questions are still not tackled by in a very very tech oriented manner, and that can actually be scaled to a huge population. So I think a huge amount of personalization, using data, using mobile, that is where the next that is where the buck is going to be. So I think and that is also getting enabled by a fundamental shift that you have more products, more users, more complexity. So you need to figure out a way to actually recommend strongly, right? So I think that's where it is headed. We are super excited by the whole growth and playing a critical role out there.
Fantastic, Mukesh. I think the numbers of 11 billion and meeting that number, multiple time fold in 1 year is actually an exponential growth that the industry have seen. I'm sure it is correlated between the access as well as the awareness. But moving further, as specifically Radhika, coming to you. India is, has the highest number of internet user in the world, second highest population in the world. Along with that, there is so much of effort from the government in order to, enable the financial inclusion, enable the lending to the customers, right? And these efforts are going on for last more than a decade at the point, and you are representing and you're working and you're leading an organization which is acting as a marketplace for all the financial product. So my question to you is that what are the innovation in the financial sector, or if I may say about the financial inclusion and lending, which is transforming and which will transform the way Indian customer look for the credit, even after the present landscape of internet penetration and the government effort.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I think great question. So last year when the pandemic hit us, right, for example, our group company, which is insurance and payments, were largely unaffected, I would say, or even investments were largely unaffected. But almost like credit came to a standstill because while there was digitization at the sourcing, but the entire funnel was not completely digitized. So we've come a long way from then on because there are a lot of action both at our kind of companies as well as traditional banks who have started on the digitization bandwagon. What I personally believe is I had to myself, there are 5 P's of fintechs. So I would say that there would be innovation across all 5 P's. The first P being the products. So there would be specific products that would come up, whether it is microcredit towards NTC, which is new to credit customers, or MSMEs, products being developed for MSMEs, or the underserved segments like subprime segments. So there would be products innovation which would happen for each of them, where it would be daily reducing balance loans. It could be just different kinds of loans which are being offered rather than the regular loans that you're talking about. Mukesh was also echoing the same kind, which is personalizing to the need of the customer. Because earlier we were looking at how can we deliver the same product digitally. Now we're looking at how can we deliver to the underserved in the personalized manner. So that's the first P, which is product. The second is processes. A lot has been said by digitization of processes, whether it is digital KYC, digital signatures. There are a lot of pipelines which have already been laid. All of them will come together and already coming together to digital journeys where we are providing loans within 2 hours in the bank account, and of course UPI enabling that further. The third thing is patterns, which I think now we have a huge amount of digital footprint, whether it is AI, ML, using those patterns to be able to predict and personalize, as in that what would lead to personalization. So looking at the bank account, looking at how he or she would be credit worthy, looking at what patterns can I form with the data footprint that the customer is leaving digitally, and providing innovations on riding on the top of that would be third wheel of innovation. Fourth is partnerships, because each of us have our own thing which we are good about. So we have access to consumers. Their consumers are coming to our platform, but then partnership with banks enabling customer to have better products. Similarly, tech fin partnerships, which we are seeing, which is emerging, where there are e-commerce companies offering deposit products to the customer, to their customer base, or whether it is insurance or investment product to their customer base. So different kind of partnerships, because I believe that you can't work in silos. Each of us have our go-to strengths, and we need to build on each other's strengths to be able to completely innovate. And the fifth and the most important is the policy changes, which I think even today, if you look at the papers, RBI is talking about fintech. How do you ensure that the innovation continues with some amount of guardrails? So I think policies have been, say UPI has been a great change which has been kick-started by the government. There is India Stack account aggregator, which we all talking about, and there is momentum which is building. So all of that together will sort of spur the other 4 wheels, and I see that across all the 5 P's of fintech, there would be huge amount of innovation that will start to happen in the next couple of years. And we are sitting at I'm thankful that by virtue of where I've been, I'm in the right space, and a lot of action happening in the next 2-3 years.
Fantastic, Radhika. I can vouch this is the most exciting space to be at the moment. And I completely agree. I think the present innovation is just trying to stitch the product for every need of the customer instead of one size fit approach. And along with that, also that the policy requirement and the regulatory landscape is very critical for ensuring that the innovation is utilized to the maximum benefit of this country and for the consumers. Moving further, Pratik, this is a question to you. While in India we are trying to, solve for Indian customer need, the credit penetration, But when it comes to the cross-border payments as well as the B2B solution, there the needs are very different, and also the requirements are very different. Various countries are involved with different laws and different perspective. And with the digitization, more and more businesses getting into the digital form, there is a transformation and a need for the cross-border payment. So on that side, what is your take on the cross-border payments and the innovation, and how exactly do you see the global payments, evolving over the next couple of years?
Great. Thank you very much, Bhavna, and pleasure to be here. I'll just take a minute to actually introduce the company as well. It's a Singapore headquartered B2B payments infrastructure company, which in very simple terms means that we allow banks and companies and travel companies and SMEs, etc., to collect and disperse funds in over 100 countries, right? And we also issue cards in some 40 different countries. And the name is NIUM. It basically is, the Sanskrit form of rules. That's really what it means. So coming to your question, I think the first thing I'd like to, point out is the fact that I think everywhere, not just in India, I think there is a great amount of work which has got done to solve for the local or the domestic payments issues, right? So if you see India as well, I mean, I think Mukesh also talked about it, UPI, IMPS and all the rest. I think there's a world-class system which is already in place. The issue, however, as you pointed out, Bhavna, is more for the cross-border. And, and I'll come to it. And obviously this is because the governments by nature are a lot more careful for, dealing with the likes of foreign exchange as opposed to domestic payments, which they feel is less risky in so many words. But, fintechs like us, we basically put technology to use to overcome these barriers. And I'll give you a couple of examples of, how this is done. So one thing we do is, in this very disparate world of each country being different and we having to be, connected to so many different banks, we use our APIs on one hand with our customers and on the other hand, with our network partners to obviate the need for SWIFT, right? Which all of you know is very well accepted, but on the other hand, fairly antiquated as well. So, and we use these APIs to deliver real-time payments across some 60 different countries, right? Wherever there is, an ability for the local domestic system to apply a real-time payment like an IMPS, we are able to use that and put a technology on top of these, domestic capabilities to provide, a payment within a few seconds at the other end, wherever it is. And that, if you can understand, that's like a massive benefit to where the present situation is, where, someone's trying to, either make a payment outside the country or, send money for tuition fees or whatever else, and you come across bad service and high costs and all the rest, and basically then you're able to get the funds to the other side. The other example is where, for instance, we could provide a virtual bank account to somebody who wants to collect funds at another country level, right? So imagine, somebody in India, for instance, and I'm not saying India it's possible because there are regulations which are in the middle of it, but let's say somebody in India wishes to collect money in a European country and they have no presence there. Forget about a bank account. What we can do is we can provide a virtual account over there, so their client can send the money to their virtual account and we can pull the money from there, right? So that is another big ability for us to bypass many of the issues which exist. I'll give just one more example, and then we'll, of course, there are other questions also which if there are questions I can always answer. So digitizing also will mean that cash, for instance, is no longer going to be a requirement. So something that we did for a shipping company, for instance, is they were actually wanting to, or they had been giving their help on deck, people like cooks and cleaners and all the rest. They had to carry US dollars equivalent in a large chest in order to make payment to them on a daily basis or a weekly basis or whatever else. The solution we gave to them is that we created wallets where the shipping company could credit them. Then on top of it, we gave them like a debit card or a Visa linked card, which they could use to, spend anywhere, and also gave them the ability to provide, give them an app, basically an app from where they could transfer funds sitting in a ship, right, effectively to transfer to their home country. So, these are all different ways, basically creating a bank account within a ship, while at sea, which are all sort of innovations, which is the theme of this, event as well. So I think in short, fintechs like us are, pretty much changing the way that cross-border payments work. But many of these solutions, I have to admit, would be much more effective if, for instance, regulations had to be, working at pace with us.
Thank you so much, Pratik. And it is very encouraging to hear that people sitting in the middle of sea can also make the payment. And that brings me to our, wonderful another panelist, Dhyanesh, and he's working on a startup to solve the need of a rural India. So on that piece, what is your take on the insurance as a sector in India, Dhyanesh? And my follow-up question will be that, what are the key innovations that you are doing in order to, evolve the rural India and also agriculture in order to bring them under the fold of financial services and specifically from an insurance standpoint?
Sure. So, thank you, Bhavna, and I would like to thank IAMI for the opportunity to be a part of the GFF. Very quickly about the company. So, Gramcover, as Bhavna mentioned, we are in the business of providing access of insurance to rural India. So, rural India accounts for roughly around 70% of India's population even today. And despite a lot of effort from the government side over the last few decades, I would say insurance in India generally is significantly under insured, right? So whether it is in terms of insurance penetration or in terms of insurance density, we still have a large way to go even to catch up to the global averages. Having said that, the insurance industry in India has been, galloping at a significant pace over the last, almost 2 decades, since privatization happened. And I would say in the last few years, in terms of the technological innovation that has kind of, really taken the industry to the next level. There are 3 or 4 things, there are multiple things that we can talk about, but I would say there are 3 or 4 things that I think are very, very crucial. So one of, obviously the first one that I'm going to talk about is basically blockchain. So if you look at blockchain, right, the whole idea is that insurance companies generate a lot of data. And with blockchain, what you can do is you can really decentralize the data and make the access of it in real-time basis for multiple stakeholders, whether it is underwriters, whether it is the claims team, whether it is the customers. And I think it leads to a lot of trust building when you have this ability to decentralize data. So blockchain is something that is evolving really, really quickly, and it also helps in terms of the I would say fastening the pace of claim settlement also, because data is readily available and you can really process that and look at claims. The second obviously is as a corollary to the amount of data that is being generated is basically big data and machine learning. So again, I think there is a lot of work that insurance companies are doing in the background. There is a lot of data that insurance companies work with, and the ability to really work on these data points and create customized products. And that is something, that's the direction in which, Mukesh mentioned that, the wealth tech direction is going in that, or the wealth tech industry is going in that direction. Similarly, Radhika mentioned that the payments industry or the lending industry is going in that direction. So similarly, in insurance, I think there is this whole, I would say, effort to kind of, really create personalized products. So that is the second part of it, where again both big data as well as machine learning are kind of key components of that entire journey. And the third very important part, I think, is I think it's very simple, but from a customer perspective, the whole eKYC, video KYC, and the digital payments part, I think that is really democratized insurance. So whereas the first two were more from an insurance company's perspective, saying how they can kind of offer a wider set of covers, make the process more seamless. I think eKYC and digital payments are the single it's probably the two most important innovations from the customer perspective, because it really democratizes insurance, right? It really brings or makes it possible to bring insurance right to the doorstep of the customer. So initially, for example, if I wanted to buy insurance, I had to go to the insurance company or to an agent. They would fill up forms. There would be a whole physical process. That entire thing can be now kind of cleared off, and you can just have a digital interface, and there are multiple. I would say entities now trying to leverage technology to provide insurance right at the doorstep of the customer, and the customer can provide his information that can be digitally verified. So the eKYC is done, the verification of the customer is done. He can choose the product, he can pay the payment or make the payment digitally, and the policy can be kind of given to him in a real time basis. I think this is really a paradigm shift, and especially for rural India again, where there is little or no access to insurance. I think this is a big, I would say, game changer. In terms of products, I would say micro insurance products, catastrophe products, and usage-based insurances again, which is all facilitated through data. I think that is going to be in the coming years an increasing trend that you will probably see on the insurance side. I think in the interest of time, I'll stop here and probably take the part on how rural is kind of getting changed also in the second part of the question. If that's okay.
Sure, Dhyanesh. Moving forward, well, there are a lot of innovation. The examples that are just quoted, in India, which the world is learning from us, right? The UPI is one of them, and obviously the kind of growth that we are seeing in other fintech sector, whether it's wealth management or insurance, I'm sure that will be also a benchmark for world to look at India in terms of adoption of these products. But Mukesh, this question is to you. Is there any innovation in the world that inspires you, which you think that India needs it, and we should have those also as a part of digital journey in India?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is some innovation that we have done which is now going global, which is UPI. I think there is more that we can actually also borrow from the world. And in the wealth space specifically, the innovation around really see, as I said, there is $1 trillion lying right in savings account and deposits, which is really at India level it is inefficient, and at an overall level only 1.4% of India's wealth is actually in capital markets, right? So if you really look at it, the growth in capital markets, the growth that you are seeing in stock markets is really not translating into growth for the masses at large. Because only 1.4%, even if it goes by 100%, is not going to actually change my, wealth as a nation in that sense, or as a household, or as an individual, right? So I think there are innovations which actually kind of make it, super simple for that money that is lying in the savings account to move to, say, for example, the innovation around micro investments. Now, today we do SIPs, which is one form of micro investment, but can we actually combine it, right, with, there is a company called Acorn, which is doing fantastically well. How do we actually, kind of, what it does, it rounds up your investments, right, rounds up your spends and moves a part of it into investments, right? So when you're swiping a card, a part of that actually goes into an investment account. And it is kind of behaviorally much more exciting, because it changes that I'm not just spending, but I'm also saving on the side at every time that I'm spending. Unfortunately, because of regulation, it is not that straight for us to bring it here. But I think there are these first set of innovations on moving that money in a manner which is more consumer centric or consumerism driven than it being it being only when I have an intent to actually invest, right, is when the investment happens. So I think that is one big innovation that we are excited about from global. There are innovations around, huge innovations happening around portfolio management, right? So as I was talking about, the whole question about where should my money go, in what amounts, and if there is a change in the situation of external, if the market has gone down, for example, right, or gone up, should I be changing my allocation, right? and how do I keep on doing that so that I'm always in great shape? And that is really kind of not yet entered into India's at mass. It has not become mainstream. And there are companies like Wealthfront, there are companies like Wealth Simple, which are more which are kind of using technology to automate all of this. And we are very much excited about those kind of companies as well. And then there are business model innovations, right? Which is for example Robinhood, which says that okay, you actually end up not paying anything for trading in stocks. Earlier there was a $6 to $7 per trade kind of charge, and suddenly, because then the innovation there was that it's actually literally in India today also, it's to actually do a transaction, a stock trading transaction is less than 50 paisa actually, but you kind of end up having a huge number on top of it, because there is infrastructure to be taken care of and all that. But essentially the innovation there was that we can actually use technology to the hilt, bring down the cost at a fraction of what everybody's paying, and supremely democratize everything that is happening. Like earlier, investments was very kind of relegated to one set of segment, and suddenly there is a shift because of this innovation of bringing everything down at a fraction of the cost. And if you really look at it, this is playing out in India in one way or the other. And the last business model innovation that I would talk about is, see, if you really look at it, we keep on talking about innovations from the point of view that there has to be something magical, like there is a silver bullet that will come and change the game. But it is always, if you really look at, there are underlying currents or underlying infrastructure that is all coming together at that very moment, which you know kind of explodes or massively opens the market, right? And we see one big thing that is happening, and that will soon kind of start to become more mainstream, is, if you really look at it, some of the best investment products are actually being given to HNIs of the world, which is people who have, like, in India, we call them at, people who have more than 20 crores to be invested, right? Which is like really, really small set. It's unfortunate that only those, elites are actually having access to the best of the products. And there is economics behind it, because because the ticket sizes are higher, you can actually kind of give a truly unbiased advice, because you get paid by at even at like at a 20 crore portfolio, if you're getting paid at even 0.1% or 0.5% is significant to actually cover the cost and we still be profitable, right? Now how do we bring this to the masses at a fraction of the cost? And that's where you will need to actually bring in technology so much that that can actually become mainstream, and really kind of makes that, first, the movement of $1 trillion to efficient places like capital markets, and then B, it gets more efficiently managed by technology, and that actually delivers really great outcomes for people, right? And when I talk about that democratization of so to say, great portfolio management services, is where I think a lot of innovation has happened across the globe, and we are kind of looking at it more closely, and probably bringing it on the e-money platform. We already have a very strong base of consumers, and also the growth has been phenomenal. Now we want to go to the next level, looking at these two key dimensions of innovation in business model, and also consumer use cases, which can actually move money from savings
Perfect.
account to, yeah.
Very nice, super helpful insights, Mukesh. And I think the idea of saving along with the expenses is actually going to transform the way the consumer think. So thank you very much for all the insight. I'll move next to Pratik. Pratik, since the area in which you're dealing is, almost global in terms of cross-border business to B2B payments, what do you consider to be the most significant bottleneck in the innovation today in that domain?
Okay, thanks a lot, Bhavna. I think there are quite a few bottlenecks, which one can pick up. But if I had to pick up one, then I'd say regulations, and I sort of referred to it in my previous point as well. I think that's like the number one point. And I'll specifically focus on India because, the Indian audience also is likely to be predominantly over here. So, so one thing is we obviously see a huge opportunity, right, in India, and there is a huge digital push which the government also has done and all the rest. There are, digital wallets, UPI, etc. We've talked about it. But again, just to repeat what I said earlier, the experience as far as cross-border is concerned is fairly bad because, if you look at an SME who's trying to send money or, anybody for medical expenses or whatever else, they have to go to hoops before, and pay through their noses really to get the service that they want. So why is that? And, I just thought I'll go back and I'll try and rationalize why, as per me, this issue seems to be there. So for one, I think the regulations, the way they stand, and this is not, while I'm talking of India, but, please don't take it in any wrong way. This is pretty much the reasons for across the world as well. The regulations seem to rely very heavily on banks. So even if someone, for instance, in the case of India, suppose somebody holds an 82 license in India, right, and they still have to deal with an 81 to make the payments. So, the kind of payments, for instance, which can be made also are limited to some 17 or 18 of them. So why is that necessary, right? In my view, I think one thing that I'd like to definitely point out is that if indeed payments has to have a moment of disruption, this monopoly of the banks will need to end at some point in time. Yeah, you can't use the existing old technology, bad networks to make any disruption possible in this area. So there needs to be fresh thinking, which obviously fintechs, in my view, can provide. So they have to be trusted a lot more by the regulators, and they have to be made to do things independently. We can, like I said, we've already let go of SWIFT in many countries, but we can't do that in India because we still have to go through an 81. Second thing is, I think, a little bit more policy related as well. And this is more about, let's say, an Indian rupee, and how it is partially convertible as opposed to much of the G10s and many other currencies which are tradable across. So what this means is that an INR has trading hours, right? And I don't know how many of you know, but it certainly is, it's very apparent to us. During COVID times, the number of hours were even more reduced because, people in banks had to necessarily go to the office, only during certain hours, and they had to take special approvals for it, that too. So, if anything has to change, then I would say regulators have to think big and realize that India has the potential to be a force, as someone else was suggesting. And in my view, work towards making INR convertible. So, I think these are 2 points in the interest of time that I'll leave, for what I feel are the bottlenecks and what I feel can be done by the government and the regulators to make some basic changes.
Thank you so much, Pratik. Very helpful insights. Moving quickly to you, Radhika, and it's a one-liner answer that I would request you. If you have a magical wand and you make one change, what that would be?
So I think just building on what Mukesh was saying, that he's talking about $1 trillion lying in the bank account and could go into capital markets. What I personally believe is that $1 trillion could go to like lending or like deploying it in anywhere for efficiently for the customer to deploy it anywhere that they want. So one thing which I would want is like, one small thing when customers, I heard somebody talking about it saying that each customer is like a sheikh sitting on his or her own data. But the customer doesn't realize it. When we did did a small survey, customer doesn't believe that the data belongs to him or her. They believe it belongs to the bank or the mutual fund AMC or the insurance company. So we already have a starting point with account aggregator framework where there are, and imagine all of this data spread across 4 different financial regulators. So you already have a starting point where we have an account aggregator framework with a consent architecture which is built in. So my magic wand will want it to wave faster and get all of those data come in. So all of these automated decisions, insights for the customer is holistic and not only looking at one particular account of his or hers, but looking at and enable his or her personal financial life to be much better than what it is today.
Perfect. Super helpful and very well articulated, Radhika. Now, moving in the end is to Dhyanesh, and this is for India, which is about the actual Bharat, which is about the rural India. So there, what are the evolution in the rural India and the agriculture that is creating the new ways to access the finances and insurance, Dhyanesh, and what will be the what is the model for the risk management that you will recommend? Would request you in the interest of time to talk about it in a minute or two.
Sure. So, as we were discussing, there are multiple areas in digitization space where India is one of the leading countries, right? Whether it is in terms of smartphones, whether it is in terms of internet access, all of this. But this has also had a very significant impact on the rural India, right? And when I talk about agriculture per se, I would kind of like to extend this to agriculture, dairying, probably aquaculture, because these are 3 large ecosystems in rural India which have a very significant impact. So in agriculture, if I look at it and extending this logic to horticulture, there is a lot of technology usage now, right? From selecting the right inputs, getting inputs regarding parameters like soil or weather to increase, also to kind of connect the farmers to market to various markets, right? There is a lot of effort there, and similarly, in terms of horticulture, again, there's a lot of data that is being generated right at the at the farmer level to kind of provide inputs to the farmer, which will kind of make the life of the farmer better. So in that sense, I would say there is, and if I were to kind of draw a parallel, both of these activities lead to better access to credit because there's a lot more information about the farmer now available, and subsequently also lead to better insurance practices because A, there is data, and B, there are now new models. So earlier there was parametric insurance, now we are looking at price insurances. We are also looking at some other hybrid insurance covers, right? And beyond that, in dairying, if I look at it, there's a lot of farmer level data being generated at the pouring, at the milk pouring level, right? Which again leads to multiple events of insurance. Apart from modality insurance, we can also look at yield insurance again for the milk that is being produced, as well as for health insurance covers for the livestock. And lastly, similar trends are also seen in aquaculture. So I would say that there is a lot of use of technology on the agriculture side as well. And as IoT becomes more prevalent and there are more and more devices that are being put into place, I would say this is going to be the way forward for more and more insurance covers to be customized for the last mile.
Thank you so much, Dhyanesh. It has been a wonderful discussion. Great insights. I'm very confident the financial sector will see a lot many innovation impacting life of every Indian citizen. So thank you very much for all your participation and your time, and also thanks to every audience to this session. Over to you, Garima.
You're on mute, Garima.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all the panelists for being a part of this session today. Thank you to the delegates as well. And for all the delegates and all the panelists, there's a chance to become a proud owner of RuPay on the go. So basically what everybody has to do is just go on to the NPCI booth, which is on our platform, and apply for the complimentary RuPay on the go device. So please do check it out. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure being here. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Please be safe. Thanks.